Hey guys, welcome. I'm going to go over subqueries. This is part 2 of module number 6, and I'm going to share my screen here, hopefully. Screen number 1. All right, so hopefully we can see this, guys. All right, that's not what we want. All right. Find my notes here. Oops, wrong one. All right, so we're going to talk about subqueries. So we talked a little bit about what subqueries were before, and I mentioned that you have it's one query and then you have a query below it. So we're going to talk about describe the way subqueries can be used and where having from select statements. We're going to talk about describe the differences between a correlated subquery and non-correlated subqueries, and describe the use of common table expressions. So let's get started. Let's see if we can find a simple one for now. So let's get something going here. All right, perfect. Use our AP database. So we're going to select invoice number, invoice date, and invoice total from our invoices table. And we're going to say where the invoice total is greater than a certain number. So this is where we put the subquery. We could say select average invoice total. Oops. From invoices. So remember, when you do a subquery, you can only do one field. You can't do multiple fields or it just won't work. And then we could say order by if we want to. Order by invoice total. So we're saying here, select all the invoice number, the invoice date, and total date where invoices, where invoice total is greater than, and then we select the average from invoice table. So there's a couple things that you could do here. You could obviously do where invoice total. See, what you can't do here is in this query. Let me show you something. What you can't do is you can't just come here and say, hey, let's give me this right here and say, give me the average invoice total like that. Because that shouldn't work, but let's see. See, it blew up. It's kind of hard to word a message. But it says error code, invalid use of group function. So you'd have to do a group by. So let's say that we did, let's copy this right here. Apologize, my cat wants out. Go. There, you can go. Go ahead. No, don't run away. Go that way. There you go. Bye. See ya. It's been nice. Go. Sorry about interruption. All right, so I could do group by and then do this right here. Copy it. And if I do this, I still get a message that says invalid group by function. So that is why you need a subquery. Now, if we did a subquery, I don't need to do that. And then we get data. So you see that in order to get that query, you can't just do a regular where clause. That's why you need a subquery. And sometimes these subqueries can be very intense. So that's our first subquery. Let's see here. We can, well, we talked about inner join, so I'm not really going to go over that one. But we could do, well, let's see. Let me think of a good example here. We could do a query that queries like certain states information, where you won't be able to get the other information. So let's say in this case right here, we did select invoice, all the same ones. Let's copy these guys instead of having to do it again. So we'll do that from invoices. We can say where the vendor ID is in And then we could say select vendor ID from vendors where the vendor state equals California. And then we'll do an order by, oops, invoice date, just like that. Now if we do that, we get data back. Once again, we can, on this one right here, we could do, see, we could do it the other way. We could say where vendor ID is, and we can't. Well, we could say vendor state is equal to California, right? Oops. Let's do this. Copy. So let's do this real quick. Yeah. So that we know that if we run this, we're gonna get this data results. But if we run it this way and we're like, hey, we're just gonna grab the same thing, you don't get the same data. Why? Because you're doing vendor state. Because vendor state is not in the invoices table. But hold on, stop the presses. Let's see if no, not ignore. Let's see if we join it and see what happens. Join on vendors. I guess a table. Yeah, vendors. And then we could say on i.vendor ID. Hold on, let's see if that's even, yeah. Equals v.vendor ID. Okay, now let's see if it works. It does work that way. Let's see if the results are the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is our last one. Looks like. Trying to get some info here. Query. Rows CMN. Event ID. All right. License 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's do this real quick. All right, so this right here, same exact results, it looks like. It looks like it is. Could be wrong. Let's do this. Let's do a comparison. Because these results, oh my God. I'll export it. Yeah, I don't need to export it. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see if we can do the same thing. Oh, that's 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so both queries provide the same result. But this one here, the only difference is we're not, well, here we have to do the join, here we don't have to do the join, and we could do the subquery. That gives us the same result. All right, let's see here, what else? So, you know, a join can include, so the advantages of a join is the join can include columns from both tables. It's more intuitive when it is an existing relationship. But the advantages of the subquery, and the reason I wanted to show you the two different ways, the subquery can pass an aggregate value to the main query, which the join can't. It could also be more intuitive when it uses an ad hoc relationship, and long, complex queries can be easier to code using subqueries. So what that means, that last one, is when you're querying this information here, you're querying both tables, and you're querying an index, and it's taking up a lot more time, where the subquery is able to be more a quicker method of getting it done. So, you know, if you're interviewing for a Google job and that's one of the questions, they're going to look for you to do the subquery because it's going to be the quicker result. And if you think about how when you query something on Google and you get results back quicker, you know, that's important to them is speed. And that's why they got to where they're at today, is because their engine is straightforward and provides a quicker result and provides a lot of results. Okay, so that's a little tip about subqueries. So a syntax of a where clause that uses an in phrase. So like where the expression not in, we haven't talked about that. So not means it's not there, and we want everything that's not there. So let's do not in. So not in subquery. And I'll show you exactly like a little example of this. So let's do a test here. So let's say we select all vendors. Let's say vendor state from vendors, and we'll do a group by on vendor state. And then we'll also do an order by on vendor state. I want to get an idea of what we got there. So let's do this, query it. Why didn't it work? Select, probably because we don't have AP. All right, why is this still not working? You have an error in your SQL syntax. Check it. Look. Vendor state from vendors. Goodbye order by vendor state. What the F is going on here? All right. It's probably not a column. Vendor state. Yeah, all right. Come on. Select vendor state from vendors. All right, what am I doing here? Group by vendor state. Order by. All right, what in the heck? I can't even read what the heck it says. In there, check the manual that corresponds to MySQL server version for right syntax in our vendor state on line 3. Vendor state. All right, what am I doing wrong? What the hell? All right, let's do select all real quick because something is not right. All right, what is going on? All right, I'm gonna use this real quick because something is not right. All right. Oops, vendors. Okay. I'll this in here. Vendor state. We're just making it simple. All right. And group by. This is what we had before. I'm not sure why it didn't work. Whatever. I don't care. I just want it to work. All right, there we go. And let's do an order by. What we were trying to do before. All right, so this tells us the states that we have: Arizona, California. All right, so alphabetical order, we don't have Delaware. So that's why I wanted to talk about that, where we could be specific. So let's do this. Let's say select. We could do that right there, which is fine. And then we could also say where vendor state is not in, we'll say Massachusetts. Okay. And so if we run our query, it's going to give us everything but Massachusetts. See, you don't see Massachusetts on here, which is fine. But if we wanted to do a subquery and we wanted to add other information, so we could say vendor ID, vendor name, vendor state, and then we could say from the vendors, And we can say where vendor state not in. And then we could say select. Oh, okay. You know what? This is where this wouldn't work here because this one up here works with the state. But now if we wanted to subquery another table, we'd have to have another table that has states and whatever. This one wouldn't. So we'd have to change it and say, hey, you know what? In this case, we'd have to say vendor ID. And then we'd have to do select distinct vendor ID from invoices, and then the order by vendor ID. You see where I'm going with this? We couldn't have did this because there's no other table that has the state information, and we have to do something like this here. There you go, because we're basing off vendor ID. But I wanted to show you that. Let's see what else on subqueries that we have here. Most of this stuff is pretty much what we've already gone over. Now, let's see here. Now, we haven't talked about a query that uses the word any. So that's one thing that we didn't talk about, which is different. So let's say we said select vendor name, invoice number, invoice total from the vendors table, and we'll say V, then we join on the invoices table, which is I, on v.vendor ID equals I.vendor.id, and then we can say where the invoice total is less than any, so any, select invoice total, and then from the invoices where vendor ID equals 115. So with that, if we query this right here, it doesn't work. Why? No column vendor. Okay, I can't spell right. It is kind of late, so, and I'm getting tired. All right, there you go. So we're saying that if it's less than anything, then provide that, but it has to equal 115. All right, what else do we have? We went over greater and less than. Okay, here's another one that we haven't talked about is where not exist. All right, so we could say vendor ID, vendor name, vendor state. We can use the same query right here. So let's copy this, go down, and oops, select vendor ID, name, state, vendor, and we're going to say we're something different. So we're going to say where, you know, you don't have to specify on this one. You can say not exists, and you can say select all. Let's wipe that off. From the invoices, and you can say where, in this case right here, we're going to say where the vendor ID equals, let's put a V right here, where equals v.vendor ID. So it's almost like we're doing a join in a sense. We're saying select everything, well, these fields from the vendors table where it doesn't exist in the invoices table, and then we're linking the vendor ID. So this is another way, quicker way, and we're using the word where not exist. So we run this. It doesn't work. Let me guess why. You have an error in SQL. So I must have typed something wrong. Okay, hold on. Vendor equals vendor.id. That's right. That's right. All right, let's see here. Select vendor ID, vendor name, vendor state. From vendors, where not exist. I doubt this has anything to do with that. something. Oh, you know why? I'm an idiot. You see how I had this right here? I didn't know how to execute it. All right, this should work fine. There we go. That's what happens when it's like 11:30. And there you go. We got results. That's where not exists. Trying to include everything that we haven't talked about. Everything else is pretty straightforward. Now, I'll give you a complex query that uses 3 subqueries. This might be a good one to try. So I'm going to do a new query for this one. So this is where subqueries get to be fun, because then you get to add multiple queries. You have them running. You have this subquery connecting this subquery, that subquery doing this and that, and so forth. And anyways, very important stuff. So let's this. All right, cool. So so let's do select, and we'll do vendor state, vendor name. Let's actually make this better. Vendor state, vendor name, and then we'll do sum of invoices. And we'll see what this is in a second here. Oops. Then we'll do a from, and this is where it's a little bit different. We're going to do open close brackets right here. Okay, and then this is going to be invoice totals by vendor. So we're going to say select vendor state, vendor name. I'll just put it on here. Sum of invoice total. Oops. As sum of invoices. Oops. I can't type tonight. There we go. And then from our from statement, what vendors B, and then we'll put join on invoices I, and then how do we join? We'll say on B.vendor, like we've been doing. Vendor ID equals I.vendor ID. And then we'll do a group by vendor state and vendor name. This is another way that we can do a group by. So now let's do this. And then here's the difference. We're going to give this subquery a name, which is we haven't did this before. So we'll call it T1. So then what we're going to do is we're going to call the parent and say T1.vendor state. So what this means is it grabs that table. So it's almost like we're creating a new table, like table 1. And we're saying table 1.vendor state, and we're also going to do table 1.sum of invoices. Okay. So you see where I'm going? It's getting a little hairy at this point. All right. Now this is where it gets really crazy. We then do a join. I can't type. And on this join, we're going to have some crazy stuff happening right now. So we're going to do a select vendor state. So we're going to do our max value and say give us the max of sum of the invoices. And we're going to say, oops, as sum of invoices. Like that. And then we're going to say from, and then we're going to have another subquery. And we're going to say select vendor state, vendor name, sum of invoice total, as, guess what, sum of invoices. Perfect. And then it's going to be from what? Vendors B. We're going to have a join statement. I, invoices. Oops, not ignore. It always wants to do ignore. And then on what? We're going to say V.vendor ID equals I.vendor ID. Okay. Now we need to group by these guys. Vendor state and vendor name. Oops, name. This is how I learned how to query a long time ago. All right, let's see here. We want to do this. And guess what? We're going to call it T2 for table 2. Then we're going to group by vendor state. There we go. Then what we need to do here is we need to have a bracket closing for this guy, and we're going to call it table 3. Now we have to join on all these tables. All right, so now we're going to say on table 1.vendor state equals table 3.vendor state, and T1 table 1.sum of invoices equals table 3.sum of invoices. And lastly, but not least, order by vendor state. Now are you confused? Because I am if it doesn't work. And we need to put, where is it? We can use that. This won't work. AP. There you go. Where are you at? Oh, and it worked. So the thing here is this query works. It's effective. It's effective, but we're joining on a bunch of different tables. So as you see here, we're creating like kind of 3 different queries, and we're taking those queries and we're putting information together. So you have questions, let me know. That is as crazy as it's going to get when it comes to a complex query. It's going to be the most complex query that we come up with. All right, what else? For the most part, there's some other stuff, but for the most part in this, we're not going to talk, it talks about recursive in this chapter, but I think that's very advanced, and I don't want to talk about recursive. We're not there. And I think from what I got here, this is enough to tie you over. So thanks for watching, guys. And I'll end this video. And this video is, I don't know how long it is. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.